Good evening and welcome to the Upset Podcast. Tonight we are talking about Does Love Have Limits? A conversation on transgenderism. Coming up next. Once again, welcome back to the Upset Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in this Sunday evening. And we're so happy you're here. And I'm so happy these people are here with me. What's up, guys?
Hey, what's up, gal?
I know, right?
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. How's the Sunday going for you all?
Not bad.
Great.
Beautiful day.
It is a
Beautiful day out there.
A little cool, but still nice out. Still nice. All right, so I'll kick us off. I don't know what I was doing, but I saw the announcement pop up about the death of George Foreman. And I know at 76 years old, and I know he's known for his boxing career. But I have to say the first thing I thought about was a George Foreman grill.
Yeah.
Because to me, that thing was a game changer in so many.
It was ahead of his time.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I've never used one.
Really?
Never used one.
Yeah, just curious. What do you use it for?
I know, even though I am a vegetarian, and it does a pretty good job with like grillers, even Big Franks, anything that you want, like a nice little sear, anything that you would put on a grill. I mean, of course, maybe. And even fries work pretty well in there. I mean, it's
Really?
Yeah.
I never knew that part.
Anything you really want to heat it up with a little crisp, you could put on the George Foreman grill. I mean, it was fast. That's the other part. Hi, Jocelyn. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, for those of us of a certain age, Charles, I listened to Tasha say he was 76. Like, that's some great achievement. There are some of us who, when we look down the street, 76 is right down there. And so, but the kind of punishment that he took as a boxer, I don't understand how he survived some of what he did, but he became a real Christian gentleman.
Yeah.
George Foreman did.
Yeah, there was a movie out about him, right? Not too long ago.
Yeah.
I think I watched that. What's up, Mr. Williams, Mike Williams? Hello, Pastor Grissom.
Yeah.
The Philly 76ers.
76ers, there you go. George Foreman had 5 sons.
All named George Foreman, right?
All named George.
Right. That's right. I remember that. Yeah. So, I mean, it's unfortunate that every day you're just hearing about someone else, whether it's someone of a celebrity status or just someone from your local church or someone in your family. It's definitely become one of those things. Hello, Pastor Cox. Where we're getting used to death in some ways and way another. Hello, Dr. Daniels. Hello, Sister Van Putten. Thanks for being here this evening. We're always glad that you guys show up. So what else? What else are you guys seeing on your timelines? And I'm throwing this out to our listeners as well. What's something that stuck out to you or in the news or something you saw?
This past week.
Who else?
Oh, I'm sorry, Keenan. Go ahead.
No, I'm about to say who else dominates the news, but good old number 47. Number 47. So the whole thing about segregation being in, taking off the ban of segregation and when contracted facilities or federal facilities, something along those lines. And so that's what I'm seeing. A lot of talk about that, thinking that this could be just just taken away, just leading to segregation. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. In the Department of Education too, signing that executive order about dismantling that, and just I've been listening to a lot of commentary about what this could mean. I just don't think people. I don't think people get it. I still don't think people get. I mean, I think people have their minds on we're saving money, like those who are very much in support of everything that they're doing. But there's so many things that fall through the cracks in saving money, and I think it's just unfortunate the way things are going. Yeah, so you said that too. The way things are happening, and how many people's lives are being impacted so quickly. Like it's.
The other news item that I saw that and I'm still not able to sit easily with it is the nation of Israel launched a strike once again over in Gaza that led to the death. It is reported of some 400 souls because they said that Hamas is not releasing all of the hostages, and so they unleashed aerial strikes that ended up with 400 people dying, not 400 soldiers, 400 people.
People.
And they validated and justified saying these people are terrorists. But when you kill 400 people, I mean, it's like trying to kill a mosquito with a shotgun. It's so life denying, so disrespectful and disregarding of human life. And I don't know how the nations of the world sit peaceably with that.
Easily,
I agree.
easily. Even in Washington, there's not much pushback on that. Their premises, they want to get rid of the terrorists, Hamas. Hamas is not just a group of, fighters, or it's a mindset.
Yeah.
When you think you have gotten rid of who you think is in charge of Hamas and the fighters, you really actually, in fact, the statistics show that Hamas is as strong today as it was.
Wow, that's
years
sad.
ago. So it's going to go on and on.
Hmm.
And it's very sad because there are many innocent women and children, many innocent men, elderly, that are just being wiped out, and they can't even account for those that are under the rubble. Tens of thousands. But
Yeah.
Sobering for sure. Yeah. Hello to everyone I missed. I'm sorry.
Now, I did see on my timeline. I just looked at it right before I jumped on. Is it true that Dr. Umar Johnson, he was at Oakwood last night?
Yes.
He was there.
Yes.
Anybody hear anything about it? How did it go?
I
heard it
heard
went well.
that. Yeah. What
Yeah,
you
I heard it well.
GP?
I heard it went well.
I heard it went well too. Yeah. That.
Well, I saw a post someone else shared of him posting about the experience, saying that he had never heard of Oakwood University prior to this invitation, and that he was well received. The crowd erupted. He said that was one of the warmest welcomes he had ever received. So it left an impression on him, evidently. But yeah, there was a lot of chatter on that over the weekend when it was shared that he would be coming.
Dr. Umar Johnson is a Philadelphian. He supposedly got his doctorate literally 2-3 blocks. Yeah, I mean,
why do you say supposedly?
Because it's been disputed.
Yeah,
It's I think he has it, frankly, and he's a very intelligent guy. But he is also extremely pugnacious, egotistical, and combative. And
But you say he was from Philly.
Good shot. I mean, and I've interviewed him several times, been on panels with him. I could not understand what the nature of the invite was about, but I understand that it went well. So I'm glad.
Yeah, it had something to do with panel discussion on Blacks in the media.
Okay.
So there were several others on the panel, and he shared his perspective. I didn't hear the entire thing, but I did see a couple of videos.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Greetings from Tennessee. Hi, Kimberly from Tennessee. Thanks for joining us.
Wow. What part of Tennessee, Kimberly? I guess you'll tell us in a moment.
And you guys doing March Madness?
What do you mean by doing?
Like, do
Put
you have
some
like
money
the
on the
brackets
line.
in there, like a bracket thing? Like, are
Oh,
you?
okay.
You know, Keenan is a basketballer. You know he's watching it.
Yeah,
You have your teams lined up? I mean, how
I'm
does
kind of surprised to see him.
No, we know he has multiple screens.
yeah.
Oh, Knoxville,
Knoxville, lovely place.
Tennessee.
Yeah, lovely place.
Yeah, cool. All right, awesome.
Well, I was just going to add one thing. It doesn't fall into a quote unquote religious realm, but in keeping of honoring women this month and the carryover from Black History, there is a once in a lifetime concert circulating in the United States. It's called The Queens.
Oh, I
And
did see that.
it brings Patti LaBelle,
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Shaka Khan, and
Cha-cha-cha.
Gladys Knight and Stephanie Mills. Now, I know you all don't listen to those gospel records, but I just think it was worth mentioning because it was four, iconic singers of the African American, descent, and each one of them is a great artist in their own right.
Yeah, I don't hear. I mean, for me, it's Del Delker, Eleanor Wright, and people like that. But
Yeah.
Yes, of course. That.
Well, yeah, some of us are not willing to admit that, we have, if not now, at one time, listened to one of those artists. But I just thought it was worth mentioning because it was,
Grissom said he had women
three
speakers.
fantastic female artists coming together to do a joint concert, which is
I love it. I love this. Looking at Pastor Grissom saying that he had women speakers at his church all month, and we've been saying that a lot of churches, and it's great. I feel like I've heard more in 1 month than I have in a long time. And one of the things that some of the female pastors said when we talked to them is, invite us other than Women's History Month. Kind of.
Yeah.
It's almost like this is the acceptable month for them to speak, but let's continue to invite them into our pulpits. But yeah, great job, Pastor Grissom. Appreciate it. All right. Well, we've got thanks, Rodney. We've got a great topic this evening, and I'm gonna switch this around here so that our lead can take us into this discussion, this dialogue. And we invite all of you who are watching right now, get your fingers ready because we want this to be as interactive as possible. We want to hear your thoughts on this subject matter tonight. But before we jump into the discussion portion, Tally, go ahead and lay down the framework for us.
Okay. Well, this is a very serious topic, and it's for grown folks only. If you are not grown, you should go and find something else to do. Let's get right into it because we won't have nearly enough time to cover this as the way that we would like to. The topic was introduced about does love have limits, and that is what kind of people can you love? And what we are actually talking about, of course, is the issue of gender identity and the LGBTQ issue. That's where we are. That's what we're talking about. Let's get right into it. Let me introduce you to a person that many of you may know. Some of you may know, some of you may not. And that is this woman. We'll start with Sarah McBride. She is the first openly transgendered person ever to serve on Congress. She represents the state of Delaware. She is a Democrat. This is Congressman Keith Self, a Republican from the state of Texas, and this is Representative Bill Keating, a Democrat from Massachusetts. Representative Keith Self is the chairman of a committee upon which Sarah McBride and Bill Keating sit. Representative Keith Self is so opposed to the idea of a transgendered person being in Congress that he refused to recognize her as being identified as a woman. Without any further words from myself, let me take you to that hearing so that you can hear for yourself.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
sorry.
could you repeat your introduction again, please?
Yes, we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply.
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman? Would you
standard-
repeat what you just said when
I-
you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America? Please.
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this.
You
hearing.
will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
And just like that, rather than recognize the Congresswoman as a woman, he adjourned the meeting. And it's because of this individual. 47th President of the United States, after his inauguration, crafted an executive order called the Defending Women from Gender Ideology, Extremism, and Restoring Biological Truth. The title is actually longer than that. But what this executive order basically said is that in the United States, it will be the policy to recognize only two sexes, male and female, and that these sexes are not changeable, that they're grounded in fundamental and incontrovertible reality. In other words, there's no argument that there are only two sexes only. And most ministers were saying amen to the president, black, white, and in between. Some conservative, some liberal were saying that. The only problem is that the president's dictum that there are only two genders or two sexes being identified as male or female runs into difficulty when we introduce you to this woman. She is Sharon Rose Kumalo, a beauty pageant contestant from South Africa where she was runner-up. And this individual, Dimakatsu Sibidi, also of South Africa, they push back on the idea that there are only two identities when it comes to gender. And instead of me telling you how they push back, let you hear them briefly explain their situation.
The Bible says God doesn't make mistakes. I ask myself if I'm not a mistake. I'm struggling with male chromosomes in a female body. How does it happen that XY chromosomes become female on purpose?
I am an intersex person. Yeah. So I'm not a male, I'm not a female. And I don't feel like a woman, I don't feel like a man. I have no idea even how it feels to be a man or a woman. I'm an intersex from birth, was born with both genitals. I don't go through periods. I don't have a womb. I don't have the uterus. They removed the penis in the name of them trying to normalize me.
In the name of trying to normalize it, these two individuals would argue against the president and those who agree that there is only a man and a woman, and that makes up the totality of humanity. They're saying that despite the fact that many people believe that that's all that God did, made a man, made a woman, and that's the only way to recognize humanity, they are suggesting that there is something more than that dualism, something that might come between them. How you identify it will be up to you, but that male, female is not the only ways that human beings are expressed in life. And you can argue with it if you want to. This isn't about belief. This isn't about faith. This isn't about theology. This is about scientific fact. These two individuals are neither male nor female. The beauty contestant is actually biologically listed as male based upon her chromosomes and DNA. The fact of the matter is this isn't as rare as you might believe. It's not common, but it's not as rare as you might believe. 0.018 of all births result in individuals who cannot be defined as either male or female. Now, that's not a lot, but that's about 63,000 people in the United States of America alone. Let that settle for a moment. But while you're letting it settle, ask yourself the question, what do the scriptures have to say about these matters? Well, we're all sure that we know what the scriptures have to say about it. The Bible made a man and the Bible made a woman. But the Bible is really not quite as concise as many people think it is. For example, it says in Genesis 1:27 that God created man in his own image, and it uses a male pronoun. But then it says in the image of God created he them. In other words, male and female is reflective of the image of God. Don't believe that one? It goes a little bit deeper than that when you get to Genesis 5, where it says, when God created mankind, he made them in the likeness of God. He created them male and female, the image of God being male and female, because God is greater than simple gender identity. If you really want to complicate things, you look at what Jesus had to say in Matthew 22 when he talked about life in the resurrection and said that people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. Instead, they will be like the angels in heaven. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but what it does mean for certain is that gender identity will not be as expressive in the afterlife. Chew on that for a second. When you take a look at, or when you consider what Jesus actually did have to say about people who were non gender conforming, or as we would call them, non cisgendered individuals. Only one time did Jesus address the issue of identifying people based upon their gender, and that is in Matthew 19, when he talks about the expression of humanity known as being a eunuch. For those of you who don't know what a eunuch is, suffice it to say, for a brief definition, that eunuchs are non gender conforming individuals who don't live traditional heterosexual lives. And in the Bible, they were historically marginalized. In Deuteronomy 23, it says that a eunuch could not approach the altar of God, could not become a priest of God. In Isaiah 56, it bemoans the fact that eunuchs felt less than because they would not have progeny. But Jesus, when he talked about these individuals, these are non gender conforming individuals. When he talked about them, he did not offer condemnation. He said this: for there are eunuchs who were born that way, and there are eunuchs who've been made eunuchs by others, and then there are those who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom. The one who can accept this should accept it. Take a look at this again. Jesus talking about people who are non-gender conforming, and he says some of them were born that way. And then he says some were made that way by others. And then he says others choose for themselves. 3 different classes of people who are non-gender conforming. Let that settle. And when you are letting it settle, think about the fact that throughout the scripture, these people appear with some level of regularity, and they do not appear in the shadows. They have prominent places in the scripture. For example, there's Ashpenaz, the chief of Nebuchadnezzar's internal court, who had charge over Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel. There is Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian eunuch, who was serving under King Zedekiah when the nation of Judah was about to be attacked by Babylon. Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian eunuch, was a military man who led a contingent of 30 soldiers to courageously rescue Jeremiah, who would have died in a pit were it not for this black eunuch. There is the Rabsaris. Now, many people, when they see Rabsaris, they think that is the name because there's like the Rabshakeh, there's the Rabsaris. But this is just a word that means chief eunuch. And this man is a military man. We find him standing at the wall of Jerusalem in the 8th century, assailing King Hezekiah and those who are there, telling them what the king of Assyria, Sennacherib, is going to do to them. He is a eunuch, but he is a military man. And then last but not least, there is the treasurer of Ethiopia, who had visited Jerusalem but found himself unsatisfied with what he found there, was reading the scroll of Isaiah when Philip was told to go to him while he was in his chariot. And this man, a black how should we say it, a black non-gender conforming individual, was the first non-Jew baptized into the Christian church, the first. And then there are those hidden individuals that are eunuchs, or at least argument can be made that they're eunuchs, that we don't really know we're seeing them when we see them. Let me give you a good example. I know that I'll get some pushback on it, but Nehemiah. In the Septuagint, the Bible that the apostles read, Nehemiah identifies himself in the last verse of the first chapter of his book as a eunuch. And in the book itself, it identifies him as filling the role of eunuch. It calls him a cupbearer in certain places, but in another place, he went in to speak to the queen, and no male would do that. And then there is Daniel, who was remanded to the chief eunuch. the aforementioned Ashpenaz, and they became such good friends that the Bible says in Daniel chapter 1, verse 7, that God brought Daniel into favor and tender love with him. I am not implying, nor do I mean to imply, that there was something sexual, but there was a relationship that Daniel had that ended up saving the lives of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and the other wise men because of his relationship with another eunuch. And as Isaiah 39 says, that it had been prophesied that the king of Babylon would take the princes from Judah and make them eunuchs in his court. And last but not least, there's a gentleman whose name is often mentioned, but not in the context of being a eunuch, and that is the captain of Pharaoh's personal security guard, Potiphar, who was also the husband of a very thirsty woman who thought that Joseph could do more than simply count ledger sheets. These are all individuals who may have been non-gender conforming in traditional ways in the Bible, and they are not demeaned at all. And here's the fact: in our churches, we have these people. They are all throughout our churches. And let's talk about what it means in accordance and in the context of today's parlance, LGBTQ, and we would add IA. The L stands for lesbian. We have in our churches women who are lesbian because they are attracted to other women without going into too much detail. The G stands for gay, which in this case is speaking about gay men, men who are attracted to other men. We have them in our churches. Many times we have them in our employ. Let it settle there for you. We have the B, bisexual. These are individuals who lay claim to the fact that they are attracted to both genders, male and female. They can be male or female themselves. They are parts of our fellowship as well. Then there is the T, transgendered individuals, people whose gender identity or gender expression differs from the sex that they are identified with and assigned at the point of their birth. Their birth certificate may say male. They perceive themselves to be something other than male. These people exist in our churches. I know because I've pastored for quite a few years, and I have encountered them in many of the churches that I have been assigned to and have ministered at. And then the Q stands for queer or for questioning. It's an umbrella term that's used for people who live non-heterosexual, non-cisgender lives. Cisgender meaning that you identify yourself as the gender that you were assigned at birth. And there are people who do not perceive themselves to be that way, and they do not lay claim to a static definition of their sex or their gender. Additionally, we have individuals who are intersex. These are people who are neither male nor female. This is a biological reality. This isn't based on what you think. This isn't about people making a choice. This is how they come into this world. And last but not least, there is the A, asexual. These are individuals who do not identify themselves at all by sexual attraction. They do not have sexual attraction, and they do not desire to interact with people at that level. They love, they have desires, they want affection, but they are not sexual. LGBTQ and I and A. And all of these people find their way into our fellowship. Let me close by sharing with you just a few thoughts. God himself, or God, isn't that bad? God transcends identification by gender. And because humankind is made in the image of God, Jesus said in the resurrection that we will neither marry nor are we given in marriage what will be as the angels of God. I do not know completely what it means, but it means that we will transcend definition than simply by gender. Human expression, though it's predominantly male or female, moves beyond that, and that there are exceptions to maleness and femaleness, and that's something that we have to acknowledge and deal with. Now, while the scriptures will set forth an ideal of one man and one woman, it is very clear that that ideal has been left behind, or shall we say, it is still the ideal, but God deals with us beyond that ideal. One man, as Jesus said, one man, one woman. Jacob had 4 wives. David had many wives and was still called a man after God's own heart. And last but not least, everybody listening to me right now probably, almost definitely, worships with, knows someone, or loves someone who is non-gender conforming. The question becomes, how do we accommodate their existence in the midst of our fellowship? I'll be honest with you. I don't have answers to all of the questions that I'm asking. But the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is that you are in the midst of some of the sharpest minds with some of the broadest hearts that exist. I'm going to leave now and let these individuals share with you how to answer these questions and deal with them. Podcasters, upsetters, what say you one? What say you all?
Well, let me just start by saying thank you for that thorough
Yes. Press it down.
overview. Yeah, because even
So
just
deep.
the
So
even
deep,
just
you know, all
understanding
pass.
what that LGBTQ. I mean, people hear that phrase all the time. A lot of people don't even have an understanding of what each letter stands for. So thank you for going into those definitions. Thank you for sharing those examples of individuals, because a lot of times we throw out theories of people. We don't really, attach it to an actual person. And for some people that allows them to disconnect from this thing from a human standpoint. And I think the thing that stuck out to me from what you said and what I've been marinating on is that regardless of how we feel about individuals in any of those categories, we were all made in the image of God.
Hmm.
I mean,
There's some, and I'm seeing some people in the chat who have some very strong opinions. There's some who question that. I believe that we as human beings are all fractured
right.
in our presentation. That we are imperfect reflections of what wasn't. All of us are imperfect, but that God has worked to restore, redeemed, and reconcile us to Himself, even as we are, and the time will come when that perfection will grow even beyond what it is in the world that is yet to come.
Right.
But the question that I would ask all of us is, what do we do when people come into our fellowship who, in their imperfection, because we all have it, they're a part of their imperfection is that they are attracted to people of the same sex, or they perceive themselves to not be identified with the gender that they have been assigned at birth. How do we deal with people like that?
Well, I mean,
Yeah, go
Take
ahead.
care, everybody.
you
Get back here, Tally.
you put two different questions. What's the? Can you just because you gave two questions. Can you say the first question one more time? How do we deal with who now?
How do we deal with people who, in their imperfection,
Mhm.
they find themselves attracted to individuals who are of their own gender?
But I'm trying to think, like in my mind, I'm like just love them, but I'm like, are you looking for something else other than
Well, I
just
mean, of
love
course,
them?
Keenan, I think that's always a baseline, but
But is it? Is it really?
well, I think for mature Christians, we would start off. Let's
For mature.
stipulate that people listening are mature Christians. Um, but someone just said treat sin as sin. All of us are sin. I mean,
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. I would
you
take that
know,
reverse, treat people as people. I mean, I
yeah.
think where we go wrong is that even as mature Christians, we label certain sins as being more egregious than others. And so, we look at someone in the LGBTQIA community and we see them differently than our neighbor who is a liar, or someone who's a philanderer or something like that. We can forgive certain, and we can wink at certain things, but other ones, in my opinion, we don't even want to deal with. We don't even want to address it. We turn a blind eye, almost to the point where we don't even see them as people worthy
Yeah.
of our attention, or even, it's
I mean,
almost like that's something you need to fix on your own. And when you get that together, you can come here and then we can treat you.
as Bill
Yeah.
Clinton would say back in the day, don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
We just, if that is your issue, you deal with it privately and don't let us know. The question becomes, do we have several tiers of membership? I think we do. There are people in our church whom we love and accept as members, but whom we would not make an elder.
Right.
And I'm wondering, is that something that happens with people who may come to us and as a part of their fracture, they are drawn to individuals of their same gender. Uh,
I
you'll see
wonder,
initials. Go ahead.
has that, are you familiar with any churches where, because nobody don't, you can't just insert yourself as an elder. You have to be elected as an elder from the church. Do you know of any churches where the church, they say, hey, this is a spiritual leader. We want this person. Yes, they're transgender, or pick any of the letters that we want them to be an elder. Are you familiar with any church?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How did that work? Like, I'm interested to know, because I'm not familiar with any church, so this is news to me.
Yeah. The church, I will not say the name of the church, but it was in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And the person was an elder in the church, and and they served very well. But because they were transgendered, people had real issues with it. And finally, the person said, I'm going to step down because of all of the issues that people made. But, and look, I'm not here to say I know the answers. I'm here to suggest that we at least entertain the questions. I mean, if a person is transgendered and now they are representing themselves and living as a female, do we have the right to say that because you are a transgendered female, you cannot be in leadership in this fellowship?
Well, again, you threw that question. The first question was how we treat them, and now you're saying, should they be in leadership? Right. So
No, I said that initially. I thought I did.
I really think what all of this boils down to is the true exercising of agape love, acceptance. We have a problem with acceptance in this framework. And that's really what the argument is. Are we willing to accept them? And we say, oh, well, they're people like everyone else and we should love them, but do we truly love them? I think there are quite a few scriptures that suggest as how Christ loved. He accepted many people, many, some, not so favorable social. But the word we should wrestle with is acceptance, because traditionally in the Adventist church, we've been very aggressive about our church rules and doctrine and biblical perspective, to the point where the God-given love that we should exercise is blocked or restrained by our need to protect the church and to protect doctrine. So we find ourselves not accepting people, just cross the board. We don't accept it. Sorry.
Yeah, but
I think that's what we deal with.
Yeah, and even based on some of the definitions that you shared with us, Tally, and even the testimonials that we heard, we're easy to just classify everyone in the category as sin. That's sin. But I'm thinking about the individual who was born with both, and this is a biological thing. Are we telling that person this is sin, that you were born this way, or you've chosen to accept one identity over the other? Is that what we're saying? Are we saying that that person is sinning because they make that choice? I mean, I feel like sometimes we're so easy to just lump everything in this category of sin without even, not that should change how we treat an individual. I'm not suggesting that, but I think sometimes we do too have to be careful, just labeling everything as sin when it's, obviously everything that is not how God originally designed is a result of sin. But to say someone is sinning, and I'm speaking specifically of those in the situation of being born intersex.
I see a statement made by a Joyce Porter where she makes a statement, and it is, I think it's a very sincere and heartfelt statement. I think it's 636. There it is. Yes. She says, tolerate and show love. Hopefully they will see Jesus in our life. Is that to suggest that they don't have Jesus in their life? See, these are the things that demonstrate a certain perspective that an individual who may have these issues as a part of their life may not be as saved as other individuals. Now, all of us know men who have reputation as philanderers. We all know them. We all know them. And, they get elected and they go to churches and all that. And sometimes we even joke about it. It's kind of like a, now if they get caught, then all of a sudden we all act like they came from the planet Zootron. They're like, oh, I don't know how he could have done this thing. But we know these people. Are we suggesting that a person who may have a different matter in their life, they may be attracted to people of the same gender, that they don't know Christ?
Can you put that statement up again? Put that statement up again. I just want to try to do a different read on it.
This statement?
Yeah, because
hopefully they will see Jesus in our life. That doesn't mean that we are suggesting they don't have Jesus. What that's suggesting is whether they will see the agape love and the acceptance love that Jesus expressed. Will they see that in our lives?
Look, here's why and I think it's a very sincere statement, but it does show something I've noted: tolerate and show. You tolerate things that are not quite acceptable. I don't know anybody here would have to tolerate $1 million because we'd be saying, "Is there $1,000,001? Can I get a little bit more?" I mean, because we find $1 million acceptable, we tolerate that which is less than acceptable, and we perceive that people. I mean, this is our culture. That people who have these issues, sexual gender identity issues, are that they have to grow in grace to know God better. I believe that is a way that most people view it. I could be wrong.
Even if Joyce, being fair to you, Joyce, even if you did not mean it that way, I have heard.
You hear it a lot. It's a very sincere thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is why I said initially, what else do we have to do but love them? And I know you said, Tally, we're dealing with mature Christians, and I'm not trying to imply anything upon Sister Joyce, but to say that you're dealing with mature Christians, I don't know who's mature. Who's mature? I mean, to be mature, according to Jesus, you have to love your neighbor as yourself. He gives the whole Sermon on the Mount talking about being mature. And I don't know if we all have arrived at that point. So I think this is a topic, like I would say, love them. Love everybody. You don't even have to understand why. Why is this person attracted? Just love.
Let's play that. Let's play that out, Keenan.
Some people don't know what that looks like.
Let's play. Yeah, I was going to say. Let's see what it looks like. I come to your church and I say, Pastor Keenan, you have been so kind and so caring to me. I'm so grateful. I just wanted to let you know that I live with a man and I've been gay, and I'm so glad you love me, and I really want to be a deacon. Thank you for your love. Will you please, let the folks know I'd like to be a deacon? How does love look then?
Oh, well, we have a process. Nobody can't just put you as a deacon. We have a nominating process, and if you are nominated, then you are nominated. But according to, are you attracted to the person, or are you actually engaging in homosexual acts? Is that what he's saying? Because I'm
attracted and drawn to people like that, and
okay.
I would love to be a deacon.
Right. I'm glad you put it like that. We all have proclivities. We all have different things. Okay. We all have struggles, but the act itself, I'm going to be clear. The act itself is sin. It's sin. I'm going to say that. Be very clear. I want to be no gray area there. But the attraction itself, I don't think that's a sin, because we all have struggles.
Okay.
So you're saying that having the conversation to have an understanding of whether the person is necessary. That's a demonstration of love, because I've seen cases where there's not even a conversation. As soon as you indicate that, the conversation stops and you're not even allowed to participate.
Can I just throw something in here? A real story as well, not a hypothetical. So there is I say a friend of mine. If anybody look at my podcast, I've done a podcast called Color Conversations. Is the very first person I interviewed. I won't say his name, right? I won't say his name, but he is a pastor. I don't know if he's still a pastor. And GP, you may know him. You may know him. But
what's his name again?
Right. But I was looking at his timeline, and then it changed. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to make a joke of this or anything. But I thought he put a picture of his sister on there and kept his name. But it wasn't. until somebody pointed out to me. And he became, well, he did the transgender, you know. He's now I don't know if he had the surgery, but he's a female now. You know, or I don't know if he had the surgery or he refers to himself as a female now, and it's still a great guy. I mean, and even that's like, you see, I'm struggling. I'm struggling with that, you know, and I want to be disrespectful to him. But the thing that's interesting is that he's still married.
Huh?
Yeah, to his wife.
That's a whole nother.
I don't see. I'm not even. Don't try to.
That's
understand.
very
I'm
multi-layered.
not even trying to understand it. I'm not even trying to.
Right.
Can I put a pause in here just for the record?
Yeah.
The sign you have behind you, Latasha.
Yes, I saw that.
Meant for the show. The sign is be what you want.
Remember who you want.
Is that are you signifying there?
Wait, GP, you don't know who I'm talking about, GP?
I don't think I do.
Okay, all right.
You said dragging me into your anecdotes.
but I'm pretty sure he's no
See
longer
me up here sitting quietly.
He's no longer an SDA pastor anymore, and I don't know what happened there.
Well, you know,
I'm sorry.
Well, let me. I mean, a question like that: if a person decides that I am not what I was identified with at my birth, and I'm acting to reflect who I really perceive myself to be, is that sin?
Say that again.
If a person says they've been coming to your church and they were brother so-and-so for the last 20 years, then they come to you and they say, you know what, I've never felt like brother so-and-so. I've always believed myself to be sister so-and-so. And now I'm changing that gender definition so that I can live my truth. And it has nothing to do with who they live with or anything like that. Is that alteration sin?
You know, I would push back when I say, who are we to define that? You know, my job, I'm just going to love them and let them work that out with God.
I don't know. I knew a pastor who, you know, he was pretty clear if somebody wasn't believing in the Trinity, they wasn't going to be in a certain place. That's who we be.
No, that's for leadership, though. You asked me that for leadership. Those are two different things.
I'm the same thing.
I mean,
but you were saying, who are we? We often have to, like the Apostle Paul says, don't you know you'll judge angels? I mean, we have to make decisions sometimes, and they're not easy decisions.
Well, I yes, you're right. But they're not. If somebody comes to me, hey, judge me, is this a sin? I mean, when does that happen? You know, can you tell me if this is sin? Normally, if people have come to me as a pastor and they have confided in me and told me that they were struggling with certain things and they had wanted to let me know, but they didn't ask me, is this a sin or not? They were just letting me know, you know, they wanted prayer. And that's what I did.
Yeah. So the fact that they felt it was a struggle meant that they felt it was.
Yeah.
It would be a sin to act on.
Yeah. But again, I've pastored below the Mason-Dixon line. So it might be in the north, you know, it might be some other things that, you know, you're exposed to that we may not be prevalent past.
How about it, Chuck? What about them carpetbaggers up north? Are they?
And I see we have a lot of different scenarios in the chat. This is similar to maybe when you just asked Sally, if a transgender individual who was born a male but identifies as a female came to church and wanted to be a deaconess. How do we handle that? And then someone else gave a situation. How do we relate as a church to those who were designated as female at birth but are later found to have an XY chromosome?
What is the Adventist statement? Because, you know, the Adventist, the church does have a statement on transgenderism.
Well, what does it say, Key?
Well, I did look it up, and it's just let's pull out some bullet points, you know, because it's very long. So I just keep it real short, Latasha. It says the church affirms the biblical teaching that God created humanity as male and female, and that gender is tied to biological sex, while recognizing the complexity and distress that some individuals experience due to gender dysphoria
Mhm.
The church teaches that feelings of incongruence between gender identity and biological sex are a result of humanity's fallen condition. Transgender individuals are to be treated with love, dignity, and respect, and are welcome to attend and participate in the life of the church. However, the church does not endorse sex reassignment surgery or behaviors that contradict biblical teachings on gender and sexuality. Full church membership and participation are open to transgender individuals who align their lives with the church's teachings on sexuality, marriage, and lifestyle.
Mhm.
That was
Oh,
in
yeah, that is-
2017.
and we do have that on our website. On our relationship ministries department has provided a lot of resources on this. So thank you for mentioning that. But yeah,
So I have a
Dr.
question.
Defoe said something a little bit ago.
yeah, he kind of was saying what I was trying to say, that just because someone is transgender does not make them a sinner.
Yeah.
I think being born makes you a sinner. You know.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's start there. Yeah. So.
But I still saying that, you know, just being transgender doesn't mean that you are living in sin. You know, that you are practicing sin. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
I was trying
Well,
to
let me ask, Tally, would the application of Galatians 3:28 apply on this issue? We
About
look at
being no male or female, or
right.
you know,
The
as I
English
was
Standard
researching,
Version says there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male or female, for you all are one in Christ Jesus. That's the English Standard Version. So does that apply here in terms of our ability for acceptance?
you know, the context of Galatians is the apostle wrestling with people who are Gentiles, struggling to gain some identity from a context of Judaism, and he wrestles with that. And so that is the immediate context, but I think it can be applied that way, Charles. That your gender identification is not a qualifier, and especially when you link it with what Jesus said, that in the resurrection, you know, we'll neither be married nor will be given in marriage, but we'll be like the angels. So there's something that is to come that I can't fully explain, but it appears that we are raised beyond the definitions that become a part of our material existence. You know, whether you're a man or a woman or a boy or a girl, and that we learn to live and love beyond those things.
How do the other denominations handle this, based on your knowledge and your experience, Italian?
You know, I had the privilege when I was serving the mayor as the director of faith-based initiative to really be close to a lot of other churches, and you find that they have very strong statements, and then you notice that in the life of their church, things are very different. The Church of God in Christ, for example, very strong about this issue. You know, you got to be straight. The holiness without which no one will see God. And everybody knows that in the Church of God in Christ, there were large numbers of individuals who were non-gender conforming, for want of a better term, who were gay, especially in the music side of things. And then there are churches like the Reconciling Lutherans who endorse homosexuality, and that's a term that is considered pejorative by many people who are LGBTQIA now, but they endorse it. And I know a very famous church here in Philadelphia where the pastor came out and said that I am gay. This is my partner, my mate, and they kicked her out of the church. And so, you know, even though they welcomed gay members into their church, but they kicked her out as the pastor. I think people wrestle with this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen a lot of churches being very intentional about having signage outside, not necessarily Adventist churches, other denominations, signs saying everyone is welcome here, even being explicit to say LGBTQIA community welcome here. You're starting to see more churches make that proclamation. Of course, the membership you're never going to have one. Well, not to say never, but usually that causes some type of divide in membership. You've seen members leave for churches taking that stance.
Well, look, I'm sorry.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Latasha. No, I'm gonna say this got me thinking. So, with that being said, do the Adventist Church do enough for the LGBTQ community to make them feel included? If that's the case, do we do enough? I know we have the symposium at Andrews University. I don't know if they're still doing it on sexuality. I know when I was in Andrews at seminary, they started it. I don't know if it's continuing, but is this something that we're yeah, are we doing a good job with it?
Well, if you believe that, for example, if we believe that the practice of sexuality that would be existing in a person from that group is sin, then it would be very difficult to be affirming and welcoming. For example, you wouldn't say, "Hey, all of you guys out there who are cheating on your wives, this is a great place for you to be. Come on over to Macedonia, and we'll wrap you up in arms of love, and you can bring your side piece with you." I mean, it's hard to do. We haven't figured out yet how to even have the conversation, much less how to be welcoming to people who have this as a part of their life and their life struggle. I know several people who wrestle mightily with the fact that one is they are gay and they're wrestling with it.
Right.
Then I know some who are they're not, they don't acknowledge that they're gay, but they're wrestling with the fact that they can't be what they think they ought to be. It just becomes very challenging. And the biggest challenge is we can't even talk about it.
Right.
Because people think that if you talk about it,
I mean,
you are condoning something that other folks are condemning. And so we don't even talk about it.
And I do think it is a little different. I know you just kind of made the comparison between, someone who's maybe a serial cheater. I feel like a lot of this community, it has a lot to do with their identity. I mean, you're literally saying identify as. And so when you're looking at someone who feels like this is a part of who I am, like usually cheaters know that cheating isn't something they should be doing. They may be conflicted, but with this particular community, a lot of times it is an internal battle, internal struggle that they have. And because they can't go anywhere with it, because we don't want to talk to them about it, the way we handle it can be a little bit, can be different, I think. And I mean, I don't know, like we talked about this before. Do we have an AY or a webinar or a seminar where people can come and say, this is open for those who have that struggle? Would people come? Would they feel like they would be accepted, or would they feel like they'd be targeted? I feel like a lot of times when we talk about that community in our church, it's from the standpoint of we need to be speaking out against this behavior, as opposed to how can we make this an environment where we can help them sort through these struggles, as opposed to reminding them over and over that it's a sin. And how do we do that?
Is that our biggest problem? Where is the conflict in us? Why are we
I think it's arrogance and the lack of spiritual humility, and that gets in the way of being open and willing to listen and ask the questions to understand. We just put our barriers up, we put our stances up, and we are quick to stick to what we know, but we're unwilling to allow what we don't know to enter the conversation. And so arrogance, from my perspective, a lack of humility, perhaps.
Yeah, because your sin is worse than mine, yours.
And that Rhonda Covington just that last statement where she talks about it, it's an abomination. I mean, so is eating shrimp,
and a lying tongue.
Yeah, a lying tongue. I mean, there's a whole lot of pronunciations on things being unacceptable. Wearing garments, made of two different fabrics, and eating, beef that is connected to dairy. I mean, if you ate a cheesesteak today, hellfire's waiting for you. I mean, but But the fact of the matter is that we have to be careful when we begin to delineate as to whose sin is more crimson. And the thing that makes sin more sinful is when it has a deleterious effect on others that last beyond the act itself. I mean, the Bible speaks of people who sin with a high hand and so forth. And I mean, you have to ask yourself, is what I'm doing, is it damaging me and others and besmirching the community and crippling, our ability to serve? I just don't know all of the answers. I really don't. And
that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. But not in a church where answers are considered to be the absolute prize. I mean, we want to know when the shaking's going to start, when the sealing's going to start, when the time of trouble is going to start, who the Antichrist is, what size shoe the mark of the beast wears. We love the answers, but one wise man said that he who would learn must love the question as much as the answer. And so, at least now we're addressing some of the questions.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up something because we're talking about, does love have limits? So we say we love them, we can treat them with a certain amount of respect. May not be leadership. Leadership may be a whole nother issue. What about, because we're talking about this now, and what about advocating for their rights, human rights? Because I know there are many of us. No, I shouldn't say many of us. There's some of us who do not feel that we should align ourselves with those communities in terms of, advocating for civil rights, whether it's DEI or things of that nature. We feel like, because they are included in that inclusion category, that, we should be opposed to it because of that. How do we feel
One
about
example, people who are transgendered are oftentimes targeted, and they receive either hate, violence, in different ways, physical, other ways. And so should we as Christians be champions for their safety, or is that a contradiction?
I had the privilege of serving the city of Philadelphia as the executive director of the Commission on Human Relations. A part of that job was to enforce laws that allowed for equal access, fairness of treatment, and protection of the civil rights of marginalized groups, including people of who have sexual orientation issues, national origin issues, religious issues. And some of the people that I worked with most were people from the LGBTQ community. And I will readily tell you that justice is justice. Equity is equity, fairness is fairness. And, learning how to fight for people who may be living lives that are different from mine. After a while, it just became a matter of what was right. We should not champion the sex worker community. That's, yeah.
Can we use Christ's method as an example of acceptance? As it clearly says in Romans 15:7, therefore welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God. So that being said, do we use that as a model to deal with our acceptance?
It's in welcoming us, Christ often welcomed people who are broken, fractured, but he would say to them, now go and sin no more, which recognizes that they came to him with sin. But the idea, and that's what a disciple is, somebody who's learning how to walk, learning how to follow. And we have to be able to help people understand how what we would say is their sin, why God regards it as such. I often think about Rahab the harlot. Come on, that's her name, Rahab the harlot. Can you imagine them saying, listen, now we're going to hide in your house, but we got a track here that talks about your loose way of life. All they wanted to do was hide. And then when they delivered her, I didn't see them asking a whole lot of questions. They just said, come on, you come and be a part of us. I'm hoping that she wasn't a harlot after she joined the Israelites, but she was Rahab the harlot.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've used this expression before, leading with love. I mean, his interaction with people always started with some place of humanizing them. I mean, recognizing, seeing them for who they were and expressing some love, which was attractive. And when you know someone loves you or cares about your well-being, you're more likely to listen to what they have to say. And I feel like sometimes we struggle with leading with love. We want to lead with right and wrong and making sure they know this is wrong. And it's like, where does the love come in? It's almost like we feel like it's tough love. If we're telling you right and wrong, that's tough love. But we can't leave that element out of just seeing people as a person first, instead of seeing people as their sin first.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the difference. That's where I'm trying to come from. And listen, we have to be honest with ourselves. We all have biases. We all have things that make us uncomfortable, lifestyles that make us uncomfortable. We have to address those things with ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, we have to be honest and say, this makes me uncomfortable. I don't, if it was up to me, may not interact with individuals like that. And I'm not just talking about LGBTQ community. I'm talking about certain individuals that their lifestyle may not align with anything we want around us. But we still, as Christians, should treat people with a certain amount of respect and dignity. That's what we've been commissioned to do.
Yeah, when I went back to school to get a degree in clinical mental health, one of the questions that they will always ask is, who would you feel most challenged by in giving therapy to? And a lot of my other classmates, I don't say a lot, but a few of them, they put people from the LGBTQ community. So I just thought that was quite interesting. These soon-to-be therapists, they feel like they would be most challenged by those in the LGBTQ community, So, and some of them weren't Christians, so I could imagine how Christians feel, just about the whole community as a whole. Yeah.
And
wait. So my most challenging was no. I won't say.
You can't. No, and to your point, Oda Wiley, is it pronounced Wiley? You said we can respect without condoning sin, and I totally agree with that. I don't think in saying leading with love or showing love that we should dismiss the sin or ignore it. But I definitely think our first approach to someone should not be, you're sinning, right? I mean, like, like, come on, like, any of it.
People become like the God that they perceive. I mean, that is a maxim, a truism that holds. And I don't mean this in a way that is. I'm not trying to malign our people. I love our church and I love our people, but the God that we perceive is a God who waits until dark when we're asleep, and then he tells the angels, "Look, I need you to go and get those books with all the Kenan stuff in it. But we're gonna find something that's gonna disqualify that brother." And that what he does then is he's looking for ways to disfellowship you, disconnect you, disenfranchise you. And then when he finds it, he erases your name, and then he doesn't even tell you.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's scary. But that is the way many of us perceive God.
Yeah.
In Jesus's day, that is how they came to Jesus and they said, "We caught this woman in the middle of adultery." Yeah. The scriptures say such should be stoned. That is how they perceive God. We found her, now let's do her. And so what happens is, as theologians, we have to draw a picture of God that is more in keeping with the God that we believe we worship, the God that who loves with such ferocity that it takes that God to a cross, who says, "Forgive them because they don't know what they're doing," who says upon his resurrection, among the first things he says, "Go tell Peter I want to meet with him," after he denied and lied and ran away from me. This is the God that I worship and that I see.
Yeah.
But many people see another God in a room with books and an eraser You know?
Yeah, nothing draws people.
Yeah, and you have to mature into that, Tally. You got to
That's
mature.
true.
Like you said again earlier, oh, we're dealing with mature Christians. But you gotta, 'cause that's what you said. We're dealing with mature Christians. But I think you have to mature to get to the place where he said a lot of us have not reached that place yet, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, that be the lesson. And I'm sticking to it, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd love to know as we were closing what some of our viewers, our listeners, takeaways were in terms of like, what do we do with this conversation now that we've had it? You know, how do we shift our mindsets, or how we as a church show up for individuals?
We also have to wrestle with our conscience. Sometimes folk will feel or think a certain way, but will not act because they feel that it would transgress the church, transgress the doctrines. But inside, deep inside, they want to help. They want to be there for them, but they don't, because they feel constrained by, how would it look? Oh, you're condoning that behavior. Oh, you're supporting those people. People who really want to love and welcome them and embrace them don't, because they feel constrained of being a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and that's not what we do, so forth and so on. I think we struggle with that.
Yeah.
If anybody's struggling with these issues, we know that down in Petersburg, there's a church with a pastor who's going to love them.
Amen. Amen.
Indeed.
I'll take that.
And I think too, we have to normalize having conversations, and not in a way of, you know, this is the sin we need to talk about, but just creating spaces where people can get out some of, even, you know, sometimes we hear ourselves speaking, we recognize our own biases, we recognize some of the things that may not be what they need to be. But if we're not having the conversation, we'll never reach a community that needs, you know, or just wants to be just like anyone else, accepted and know that God loves them. And that
let me ask, can I just ask a question? You know, and this is directed to the pastors in our co-host spots. If a community of LGBTQ approached you as the pastor and approached your church and said, we want to be a part of what you're doing. We want to have a sit-down talk about our spirituality, what would be your reaction?
Let's go. Set up the meeting. Let's do it. Have a conversation. Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
That's Petersburg, Virginia.
310 West South Boulevard.
Yeah. But the thing is, Keenan, I'm happy to hear you say that, but I struggle, because how many will say the same?
They just want to have a conversation.
I'm happy that and I believe you, like I know that of you, but it's just how many have approached others and did not get that type of response, and how many have, you know, just now had this bad taste in their mouth because they tried to make that connection and they were rejected. But anyway.
Wait, GP didn't answer.
I shook my head. Yes, I'll have a conversation. Both of my churches will host.
Put it right out there on Broad Street, huh, Keenan?
Like, stand up, declare. Oh yeah, we can maybe tackle that on another show. The DL, man, that DL boy, I remember that.
That's just G, but quiet. You know, it's I don't want to tell anybody. You know, I've known several Adventist pastors who were gay. You know?
Yeah,
I knew one I went to school with. He was a pastor, and finally he came out, and his marriage, of course, ended. His career ended, and he went on to become a mayor of a city.
Which city, Tyler?
It was in California, and I can't remember it. I mean, there's stories out there, you know, there's stories out there. And so I interviewed him when I was on air. It was just because I didn't know he was gay when we were at Oakwood together. you know.
Yeah, I would dare say that there are folk in our leadership.
Oh, absolutely.
That are having issues. I had the opportunity of covering an addiction event. And I was shocked and amazed at how many Seventh-day Adventist administrators and pastors attended because they had that issue. It was confidential.
And that's
the leader said that he had a lot of confidential, conversations with individuals who are struggling with the very subject that we're dealing with today. So they're there. We just don't know that they're there. We don't know who they are. And we don't need to know who they are. Just know that they are human and they struggle with the same problems.
Yeah.
People that we are talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's true. I know we have to end this, but Mike Williams made an interesting point. You know, they could talk to you, Keenan, they could talk to you, GP, and you can make them feel great. But as soon as you bring them to church, they sit beside sister or brother so-and-so, and they have a word for them about how we don't do that here.
Well, we don't have to worry about that because Tally said that we're dealing with mature Christians who love.
And you corrected them. We're in all different stages of maturity, for sure. Maturation of it. But no, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone in the chat. We love having this dialogue with you guys. It makes it even more meaningful. So thank you for sharing all of your points. And I think in general, we can all do better at loving a little better. And so I think this is a growth area for us, and let's be intentional about it.
Well, to answer the question, and my final word is to answer the question to the show is, does love have limits? No.
No.
That's the answer.
Mic drop. No. Okay. All right. Once again, thank you to everyone for engaging in this important dialogue with us. Share with us in the comments some other topics you want us to tackle. I mean, we already saw one, but if there's anything else, you know, we're trying to hit those important things, those topics that some other people may not want to talk about. But hey, we're not scared. We want to talk about it here on the Upset. So you know, you can't scare us. I'm scared to say that.
Upsets you is worth talking about it here.
Right, and that's why we're here. We're here. All right, everyone. Thank you, Rodney, for worthy of a satisfied episode. Yes, thank you.
Brianna, bless her heart.
Lavender. Oh, okay. Lavender weddings. Good night. Good night, all. All right, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to join us back here again next Sunday, same time, same place.
Peace.
Have a great week, everyone.
Take care, everybody.